Welcome everybody. My name is Chris Vescovi. I'm a solutions consultant with Turnitin and Gradescope, and I hold trainings every day on how to use our different products and different LMSs. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Gradescope product. You're going to be able to use Gradescope through Canvas. Everything you see from my side today, I know Isabel's going to start us out with a Canvas workflow and explain, but everything that I do in here today is going to be possible for you within Canvas. To start off with, I'm just going to pull up a little workflow diagram that we have on the Gradescope homepage to explain what it is and what the value here is, and give you a little background as well. So Gradescope really became popular for instructors looking for a quick way to grade handwritten work in classrooms. So what Gradescope would allow you to do is collect a huge stack of papers, a handwritten assessment, and scan them into the program and then electronically grade them efficiently and quickly, because the unique thing about it is it allows you to grade by question as opposed to grading by an entire packet or by student. You're grading by question. And this workflow does apply very well, if not better, to a more asynchronous online class assessment, the type we're seeing a lot of now, thanks to a big shift to away from in-classroom teaching because of the pandemic. So luckily, everything that teachers loved about the in-person version of Gradescope does apply. The big difference nowadays, though, is that instead of collecting exams or homework or assessments from students and worrying about scanning them in ourselves through a fax machine, I'm sorry, not a fax machine, a copy machine, or making scans, we're going to meet the students where they are and ask the students to upload their own work, but we're still going to be able to collect that electronically on the Gradescope software and then grade by question. And in addition to grading by question, I'm going to show you the system today. You're also grading with a dynamic, what we call a dynamic rubric. So I'm not talking about a traditional grid style rubric. It's Gradescope rubric's a little different. We're building items along the way to either add or subtract points from the student's response based on what they've provided us. And without digging into the product just yet, because I'm going to let Isabel start in Canvas today, I do want to point out on the homepage here, there's also a section where we can look at some examples from real instructors and students who use Gradescope across the board in different content areas. But just so you have an idea before we dig in, I'll pull up this engineering problem here. You can see it's quite a lengthy response from the student. We have the question, and we would go into Gradescope and be presented with all of our students' answers to this question too. And then we would build this rubric on the fly as we're grading. So as we're flipping through and seeing the different responses we get from students, we're creating rubric items and therefore also creating feedback for our students and applying what's appropriate for that particular student's response along the way. So if there's an issue with it or something they did that was that earned extra points, whatever the case may be, as you are grading it, you can create these grading items in this rubric and apply them as needed. And when you're grading one question at a time, this becomes even more important because it keeps everything consistent for you. And if you decide to change how you're grading something, you can alter a grade on, let's say, the 20th submission in, and anything you've graded up to that point in the same manner with the same rubric items will be updated to reflect the new scoring that you set. So we'll be able to take a look at this in action today. Isabel, shall I pass over screen sharing to you?
Yes, I would love to take over for just a moment of y'all's time. What I'm going to do is I am going to share my screen here with y'all. So for this next part is, I didn't even introduce myself, but my name is Isabel Lizalde, and I am with the Office for Academic Innovation. And so if you guys have any questions regarding using Gradescope in Canvas, you can email us at aihelp@tamu.edu, and we're going to be able to help support you from that. But my part of this training session today is going to be the Canvas integration piece. We're going to be able to highlight a lot of the features and tools that you can use with Gradescope, but the main part of this is the great interaction between Gradescope and Canvas. And it's going to be the fact that you can integrate them into assignments and also use the grade passback and the Canvas roster sync tools within here. So you don't have to worry about exporting, importing things. It's all going to be done through Canvas for the most part for setting up, and then you're going to be able to leave to Gradescope and set other things up as you go along. For this little bit of time, I'm going to show you how to set up Gradescope in your Canvas course. For this next step that I'm about to show, you don't have to do this every time you're going to enable Gradescope. You do this one time and you won't have to do it ever again, but you're going to do it per course. So for every single course in Canvas that you have that you want to use Gradescope, you're going to be able to do this per course. So what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm right now in my Canvas course, in my Canvas environment. And what I'm going to do is on this left-hand side in my course navigation, I'm going to click on settings. And while this step isn't required, it's something we do recommend to use at least for the very beginning so that your students can have easy access to your Gradescope course from the course navigation. So what you can do here is by default, whenever you go to this area, you're on your course details tab. If you can head over to your navigation tab, and then from here, if you scroll down, we're going to look through these long lists of tools, and you're going to look for Gradescope. Here you can do one of two things. Is you can either click and drag and move this up to the other top area, or you can click on these three buttons right here on the right-hand side. We like to call this the snowman. Click on the snowman, click on enable, and it gets added up here into this section. You can click and drag to reorder it, and then whenever you're done, you have added it to your course navigation, click on save. So once again, just to review this, you're going to go to settings, navigation, you'll click on that snowman to enable, rearrange it wherever you would like to in the course nav, and then click on save. So after you've enabled this in your course, you're going to do one more other item. You're not going to have to do this ever again, more than likely, now that add drop week has completed for Texas A&M. But what you could do is you're going to be able to click on this Gradescope icon right here in your course navigation. I'm going to click there. And what it does is Gradescope integration in Canvas does this amazing thing where it creates an account for you. It creates accounts for your students. It creates a course for you automatically. That's the ease of use with the Canvas integration. But you do have to sync your Canvas roster for the very first time that you're going to use Gradescope in the course. In order to do that, after you have clicked the Gradescope from your course navigation and you're taken to Gradescope, is on this left-hand menu, you're going to click on roster. So I have already synced my roster a few times since this morning, actually. But now that add drop week has concluded, I'm going to just really quickly sync my roster one more time. And the way I do that is down here on this teal banner. There's this sync Canvas roster button. If I had no students in my course right here, I would see a sync Canvas roster button that appears here. But for me, I'm going to click sync Canvas roster. From this area, I'm able to sync my roster with Canvas, and I can click the sync roster button. We do recommend, if this is the first time you are syncing your roster, to let the students know that you're adding them to this course in Gradescope. And also, hopefully, you would have already told them that Gradescope would be required for this course, so this is not a shock to them. I'm going to uncheck it for mine because I've already let all my students know about this since I've synced my roster this morning. Click that and then click sync roster. This process will take a moment or two depending on how large or big or how many changes need to be made to your roster. But after that roster is synced, you are good to go right here. And now you see all of your students added. You won't have to do this again unless you have noticed that you've had a lot of students adding or dropping your class recently. So you can go ahead and click that sync roster, sync Canvas roster whenever you need to. You won't have to do very much with the roster after that. But next, we're going to talk about, so I'm going to go back to my Canvas tab. I've added it to my course navigation. I've synced my roster. The next big step is going to be starting to create those assignments in Canvas. So for ease of use, I can always go to my modules or my assignments area to start building out my assignment. But our best practice, the number one thing I hope y'all can take from today's training session, is to create your assignments in Canvas first and then create them in Gradescope after the fact, so that you have the ease of use between the pass back of two areas. To do this, I'm first going to go to my modules area actually. I already have a module titled Gradescope right here where I'm going to add this assignment, as it is a best practice to use the modules area to deliver any content to your students in Canvas. From this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus sign right here in the top right of this module. Click on that. By default, I have that drop down for adding assignment. I'm going to leave it as is, and then I'm going to click on this new assignment. I'm going to give this a title and then add item. From here, I don't recommend publishing this assignment until you have set up everything in Gradescope, but we're going to go ahead and start editing the assignment to tell it I want it to use Gradescope. Next, what I'm going to do is click on this edit button right here on the top right. This is how I make any modifications or changes to my Canvas assignments. You can add in the instructions the same way you're used to with any other Canvas assignments, but the most important part out of all of these settings is right here, the submission type. Your submission type defaults may be a little different from mine, but under this drop-down menu, you're going to go ahead and choose External Tool. So just a reminder, you're going to create a normal assignment like you're used to in Canvas, but submission type, External Tool. We're used to selecting online, but let's select this one. After you have selected the external tool from that drop-down, you're going to click on Find right here on this right-hand side. You're going to scroll down this list, look for Gradescope, and then click on it to select it, and then click on Select on the bottom right. It autofills it with this link right here. You're going to leave that link alone, but right below there we have this Load This Tool in the new tab. Go ahead and select that, as that is our best practice for any LTIs, so that it takes you directly to that tool, especially if you have very complex assignments and instructions. You can make any other modifications to these settings as necessary, but then when you're ready, click Save. Don't click Save and Publish until you've made your assignment in Gradescope. So you're going to go ahead and click on Save from here, and it's going to reload with this area. You can click Load Gradescope Assignment number 3 in a new window, and you're back in Gradescope. So what we're going to do now is we're going to able to go through what Gradescope is. I'm going to go ahead and stop my sharing, and Chris will take over from now on to talk more about Gradescope and the assignments.
Great, thank you. So I have opened up the Gradescope screen. You saw Isabel did launch Gradescope in a new tab from Canvas. Just to be clear, I'm not in that Canvas environment, so I'm working with Gradescope as if you just launched it from that tool in that new tab. So that's what I'm doing here. On the instructor side here, I can see the list of assignments I've already created for my course, and then I also have my my student account ready to go back here, because what I want to show you now is the first of all, the value of Gradescope, what that dynamic rubric actually is, and why all this setup is worth it. And then what I want to show you is how to create an assignment and how to submit to an assignment as a student, or how a student would submit to an assignment. All right, so let's go ahead and begin with what I think is the main point of using Gradescope, and that is the dynamic rubric. So I've already explained it a little bit. When you are assigning a Gradescope assessment, students are going to submit their work, and then the instructor will grade by question. So I'm at the point here, and we are going to go over the workflow for creating an assignment, but I'm kind of skipping ahead because I want to show you the value here. At this point, the students have already submitted their work, and I am returning to an assessment to grade it. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this one here. We can see it's two versions of the same demo assignment, but this one is not graded yet. So I'm going to go in there. We're going to grade that one. So I go into my assignment, and as I explained, we're brought into the question by question breakdown for this assessment, as opposed to something like a list of the students. So we're grading by question. I'm going to begin with my question 1.1 on this assessment, and we'll start grading there. So I click on my first question here. And if you've never seen this screen before, it can be a little intimidating. I know there's a lot going on, and I'll try to clear that up now. So the left side of the screen is reserved for the actual student submissions. This is where we're going to see the work that the students have written or scanned in, or sometimes it's even a Word document or a Google Doc that they've submitted as a PDF. So whatever the case is, what we are accepting from students and grading will show up on the left here. Don't be, alarmed that it's showing you the first student on your roster or a different student. We're grading by question, remember. So we're going to be looking at question 1 for all of the students in this case first. It doesn't matter who gets graded first up here. On the bottom left, you can actually see I'm on submission 1 of 20 right now. And I can always hover over the current number, the current submission, to see who's I'm grading. Otherwise, we are working with the question here. We might not have the student's name on top of the paper, especially if it was a multiple page assignment. So you do have their name here if you need it. Now, the difference between instructor uploaded templates and student uploaded work is that when you are in charge of the entire assessment template, you know where to expect student answers. So for this case, you may have noticed when I came in here, the program already zoomed me in on question 1. If you're accepting student work, well, we're going to see a whole page for the student work, if not more than 1 page. Because when a student is writing up their own submissions in their own format and then submitting it to you however they can, one student's answer or the area in which they answered in may vary from the next. My point here is, though, the student will designate on which page they've answered their question if they didn't specify the question alone. And you can always zoom in and out of the view however you need to. So in other words, sometimes you might be zoomed into the exact question. Sometimes you might see a page that has multiple questions answered on it. And you just need to remember, okay, this is the question I am grading now, and you can zoom in on it. All right, so the left side is the student's work. The right side is where we do all of our markup. This is going to be where we build that rubric out. You can see right now I'm still on question 1.1. This student has received no points out of 3 just yet. And then I have my list of rubric items. Well, right now it's just 1. And for this answer here, this is the correct rubric item to use because the student has answered this question properly. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark off this number 1 here. We'll see this student receives 3 of 3 points. And then I may move on to my next ungraded answer. So I click next ungraded. You can see now up here, this bar is tracking my progress of what I've graded so far. I've graded 1 of 20. Down here, you can see I'm now on the second student's submission. Now, this student did not answer correctly. You have a few things that you can do when you are marking up an incorrect answer. There are different ways to annotate the student's response. So if I go up here, I can click this text box if I want to insert a text box and then pinpoint an area on there for the student to see. So I can move that wherever it needs to go. I can delete anything that I create there. There's also a pencil icon. So if I just want to write, we're missing the 1/2 there, I can fill that in for the student. That way, when they come to look at their assessment and look at the markup, they'll see that there. Now for this student, I do not yet have an appropriate rubric item because it's not correct. So what I'm going to do is add a new one, and this is very simple, this example here, but you can make these little feedback pieces as detailed as you need them to be for the question. For me, I'm just going to put, we're missing the 1/2, and I'm going to take off a couple points. Now, I just created the rubric item. I still need to apply it, so I'm going to go ahead and click this 2, and then you can see here, this student has received 1 of 3 points. We're all set, so I'm going to move on to the next ungraded submission. Here we have our third student. another correct answer, you'll notice the rubric items are persistent. They stay there. I can continue to choose from anything I've created so far. Correct is there. We're good. I'll move on. And then we have another incorrect one. And now in this case, we're missing that plus C. So I'm going to add a new rubric item. Say we're missing plus C. I'll take another point off for that. And now we've got a grade of 2 of 3 points, and I move on. This student here is missing both the half and the plus C. Luckily, I already have rubric items for both issues. I mark them off. At this point, what if I decide, well, this student did have x squared. They could have given me something else totally. Maybe I want to give them a partial credit for that x squared. There's different ways to do it. We can add on another rubric item with an extra point. But what I think I'm going to do is alter my missing half grade here so it's more in line with missing plus C. We'll change this to just a point deduction. And now we've got partial credit for that piece that the student does have intact. And as I explained before, when you make a change like this, it's retroactive. So if I go back to the other student who is missing that half, you can see that only a point has been deducted now instead of the initial 2 points off that I gave. There are other features in here that you can use. Let's take a look at rubric settings. If I click on settings, I can set my rubric to a negative scoring type or a positive scoring type. The difference is with negative, which what I've been showing you, you start off with the full credit and then you're deducting points for inaccuracies or errors by the student. Positive scoring starts you off with a 0, starts the student off with a 0, and we'd be adding points for what they've answered correctly. So different types apply to different questions, and you can always change that. You can even mix them so you're not even locked into whatever system you go with. So again, I'm at a negative scoring rubric. So as soon as I type a number in this box, it becomes a red and it's a deduction. But I can always manually put in a plus sign there and it flips it to green, and now that's a point addition. Also in there are ceiling and floors. So right now it says the maximum score is 3. So in some cases, you might want to avoid accidentally giving extra credit based on, you can have a very long, complicated rubric with many additions. If the student earns full credit and we don't want to go over, you have that ceiling in place. So if I have this 4 points here, but I stop out at 3 here. This rubric can be edited at any time. Anything we've already created can be changed. We can also import rubrics from previous questions on our assignments that we've run using Gradescope and Canvas. All right, a few more things before we move on to the assignment creation workflow. Down here, we have submission-specific adjustments, meaning whatever I use in these 2 boxes here is only going to apply to this particular student's submission here. It will not get added to the rubric for the question. So if I'd like to add a point, I can do that. I can subtract a point there. I can even provide a comment for the student in this box, and only they will see that. If you do use this comment box, your comments are saved throughout this question. So if you want to apply a previously used comment, you can do that as well. And finally, the last thing I want to point out on this interface is that if your question is and answers are simple enough, you can even use keyboard shortcuts to move through grading even faster. So I'm going to put my mouse over here, and you'll notice when I type 1, 2, 3, and 4 on my keyboard, you can see the rubric items flashing there because they are aligned with my keyboard inputs. There's also a shortcut for the next ungraded button down here. So if I have my thumb on the Z key, I don't even need to touch the mouse if my rubric is already made and I just want to flip through to the next question. All right. If there's any questions so far, please feel free to unmute and ask, or even use the text chat box because we're monitoring that. Happy to answer anything. But at this point, what I'm going to do is now take you through the assignment setup process and then show you how students would submit to a Gradescope assignment. So I'm just going to back up to my home page. You won't have a home page because you're using this through Canvas, and you will have already linked the course. So it'll be brought right to this page, which is the course that is linked to Canvas. Let's go with the assignments button over here to build the new assignment. So I'll click that. And I've already got a couple existing assignments. To create a new one, I'm going to select the Create Assignment button down here. And then I'm presented with 5 types of assignments. Now, this can get a little tricky, the first 2 here, but I'll explain it. These technically are they're identical assignment types. The difference is one will default to an instructor uploaded situation. The other will default to a student uploaded situation. So if I go ahead and create an exam or quiz and click next, you can see right here who will upload submissions is set to instructor. That doesn't stop me from changing it to student though. If I go back and go with the homework problem set, click next. Again, I'm defaulting to student this time, but I'm free to change that as I need. So when we say exam, quiz, and homework and problem set, it doesn't necessarily mean the assessment you're creating is considered to be an exam or a homework in your course. We're just talking about the defaults for the assignment type. So in other words, you can build the quiz and have it be student uploaded, and then this would default to your student uploaded options. So it really doesn't matter which you choose. You can always customize it. We are going to do a full walkthrough or a workflow using the homework and problem set because I want to show you the student uploaded process in full. Before we jump in with that though, I do want to explain these 3 briefly. The bubble sheet is a Scantron alternative. This was used heavily for in-person instruction because you would print out these forms and have students mark them up, obviously. We don't see as much use for these anymore because in order to use them asynchronously and online instruction, the student would either need to print their own copy or have a device or tablet with a stylus to actually bubble things in, and that can be quite tedious. It's probably easier to allow the student to submit their own work or reframe how we're going to present these questions. The programming assignment has the same rubric, the dynamic rubric system that we already saw on my exam or my regular Gradescope assignment, with the added functionality to facilitate code. So the interface changes to allow lines of code. The instructor can annotate each line individually if needed. There is a code similarity feature, so you can check the class's work against itself if it's supposed to be original code and you want to make sure that the same submission was not submitted by 2 students or more. You can do that. There's also an auto grader feature, and the auto grader allows you to customize a series of checks to put your student's code through, and it can award points automatically should the student pass those code checks. Under that, we have the online assignment. The online assignment would be a nice alternative to this bubble sheet here. If you're already using Canvas quizzes heavily, then this might not be worth converting everything into this. What it is it's a Gradescope style quiz, online quiz or assessment that the students answer directly in the web page. So they'll go into Canvas, they'll launch Gradescope, go to the assignment, and it will display fields for them to enter their answers into. So in other words, it's an online quiz. The value of this is you get to use the Gradescope dynamic rubric. However, if you have very long online assessments already built over in Canvas, I'd recommend checking this out first before committing to transferring all of your Canvas work in here. At the moment, this does not support question randomization or question pools. We are looking forward to that for this fall. So that's it's still considered to be in beta. All right, so all of that now explained, I am again going to go up here and we'll go with the homework and problem set. This is the one that defaults to the student uploaded work. It's what I used to for today's demonstration. So we're going to see, we'll create this and then we'll look at a student uploading to this type of question or assignment. This is the one that's most frequently used by instructors today. So let's go ahead and hit next to get this set up. We'll give this a name. And then we select a template. And the way that I look at the template here, I consider it to be the student's instruction sheet or prompts. So this is when a student comes into Canvas, you are free to put as much information or instructions as you want on the Canvas content item. But once they launch out into the Gradescope screen, they might need some guidance on the Gradescope side of things, and that's where this template comes in. So when they're ready to submit, they go into Gradescope, they launch it from their Canvas course, and then they click into an assignment and they will be presented with an opportunity to look at this template. So it's an instruction sheet. I'm going to go ahead and show you an example that I've got. Let's see. Want to preview it here. There we go. So very basic example. I'm sure yours will be more robust than this. This is just a quick list of questions that I expect my students to answer using their textbook. 3 questions. Question 2 is broken down into two parts, so we'll go with that. So when they launch this Gradescope assignment, they'll be presented with that PDF and they'll be able to review what I'm expecting from them. It'll also help them in designating their answers to the right questions. And I'll explain why. I'll show you when we get there. All right, so when we go further down, who will upload the submissions? We're going to stick with the student. We'll say, I'm just going to, actually, let me do this yesterday's date. The release date is when the assignment becomes available for students to submit work to. The due date is the first of potentially 2 cutoffs. So if you want a strict due date, you'll stick with just the one due date. If you want to allow late submissions, you can do that and give yourself another week or so, whatever you want to do. You can set a late due date, and then that can be the true cutoff. Anything that's submitted in between would, of course, be marked as late on your side of the system. I am not going to enforce a time limit for this type of assignment. If I was doing the online quiz, maybe I would. But for this, we're asking students to answer questions, and then especially if it's their first time, they're going to need some extra time to figure out how to upload their work, whether they are taking pictures or scanning it in. So I don't want a countdown to start as soon as they launch this PDF, typically. Under here, we have the submission type. I'm going to go with variable length. That ensures that regardless of my students' penmanship and handwriting size and how long they want to make an answer, how much scratch work they do, this is going to allow them to upload whatever the case is. The templated is when I have created an assessment and I'm sending that out to students and asking them to respond in specific fields. It's not as used much anymore because, again, we can't count on students to have printers or a stylus in order to fill those out. So I'm going to go with variable length. Below that, we have group submission. This is an optional feature. If you'd like, you can set a group size, which allows one student to submit on behalf of multiple. So if I have a group of 3 students, one student would visit the Gradescope assignment and upload the submission. When it's time for you to grade in Gradescope, anything that you annotate will appear for all 3 group members. And when you send grades over to Canvas, it will work for the 3 group members. And then under that, we have template visibility. That one is always going to be checked yes. That ensures that the students can view the template that I uploaded. So because this is, it's going to be 2 levels down. First, they're in Canvas. They're in their module or course folder. Then they're launching Gradescope. It is nice to have a reminder of what the prompt is and the instructions are going to be. And we don't want to limit students' access to that instruction sheet, which is why I'm checking that one off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create this assignment. And the next thing that happens is Gradescope uploads the outline I gave it, and it's asking me to kind of rebuild it over here. So regardless of whether this is textbook questions or a list of prompts, whatever the case may be, I need to rebuild it for Gradescope. And the reason why is we need to build buckets of sorts for the student to designate where they've answered each question on their uploaded materials. So this alone is not enough, this flattened PDF. So I need to tell Gradescope this is an assessment that is broken down into 3 questions. The second question is broken down into 2 parts. I can title these however I like, if I want to just put what I put on the outline, or if I want to put in some more detail. Whatever the case is, I can break this down and set the point value over here on the right too. This is the default point value that is going to appear in the dynamic rubric for us to grade with later on. So we can change that. Once that is all ready to go, we save the outline. All right, so that assignment is now made. If I need to, I can always return to it, to the outline here, and edit it if I need to. We're on the Manage Submissions step now, which is going to be our inbox for students to submit work. I, of course, have not submitted anything yet as a student. That's why there's nothing here. Before I head over to the student side, I do want to point out the Regrade Requests button here. This is a nice feature that allows you to give your students permission to challenge a score. So if you like, you can leave your questions open for students to send you a message through the system here requesting that you take another look at one of their responses, whether they think there's a mistake in the rubric or if they just want to further argue, why they answered the way they did and why the answer should be justified as correct. If you want to allow them that flexibility, you can turn this on. You can also turn it off entirely, or you can have it on, but with a particular start and end date. So if you only want to give the students 2 or 3 days, maybe a week to challenge anything, then it's open, and once it's shut, it's shut. So you don't have to worry about receiving a load of regrade requests towards the end of a semester and like a attempt to get some extra points before the end of the semester when grading goes out. So you can manage this however you'd like. I'm going to leave mine on so I can show you how it works from the student perspective too. But now what we'll do is jump over to the student side, and I'll explain submitting work from students. All right, so I'll have to refresh this course, and now there should be, oh, you know what, I forgot to do something here. Bear with me, I think I may have forgotten to release this. Okay, let's see if that works. Nope. I don't know what day it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the student has logged in through Gradescope, through Canvas. They will click the link for your Canvas course or your assignment level link, either one works, and that'll navigate them over to this screen here in Gradescope. It'll open up in a new tab, just like Isabel showed you earlier, except for the student perspective. Once they launch the Gradescope Hub or the assignment, they can click into their assignment and get started with uploading their submissions. There are 2 ways here for a student to upload work, and they both have their pros and cons. Let's start with submit images. Oh, by the way, before I click that, this is where that template will appear, or that Gradescope-based instruction sheet. It will appear right here for the student to launch and download. All right, so the students have 2 ways to submit work. We're going to start with submit images, and I'll explain the pros and cons of this. The upside of this method is that Gradescope will zoom in straight to each submission, each question individually for you. You won't have to zoom in and out yourself if the student answered multiple things, multiple questions on multiple areas of a page. The downsides to uploading photographs is, well, there's two. The one for the student is if this is a longer assessment where there's 20, 30 questions, the potential to mix up images is pretty high. It leads to just accidental file associations. So, you know, these questions might be flipped because the student might be taking pictures on a phone one by one. And if there's 20 or 30 or more of them, that's a lot of file attachments to it to deal with. And when you're working on a phone and a camera roll, it's easy to select the wrong question by accident or a wrong answer. On the instructor side, the downside to this method is that you are kind of at the mercy of the student's lighting situation and photography skills. So if there's poor lighting and it's a little blurry, you're not going to have the best shot of whatever the submission is, especially if it's handwritten. So if it's a quick enough assessment, then by all means, this is a great way to do it. It's nice and fast for the student. The longer the assessment, though, the more likely they'll have a better experience using the PDF method instead. So let's take a look at the PDF version instead. So the student in this case, what they're most likely going to do is take a picture of every page of their assessment. Every page they've put answers on, they'll take a picture of it if it's handwritten. If it's a document already, if they've answered in a Word document or a Google Doc, they can just save that as a PDF and upload it as is. But if it's handwritten, they'll take pictures of each page, and typically they'll use a PDF app on their phone or tablet to consolidate the pages and upload everything as one file. Gradescope does recommend certain apps. I believe it is Scannable for Apple devices and Genius Scan for Android devices. We have a guide on best practices on scanning things in that I will make sure to include in the follow-up. It's positioned towards students so that they have an easy time downloading those apps and using them to scan in work. Both apps are free. Neither put watermarks or limitations on the files that are going to affect students uploading to Gradescope. I'm going to select a PDF now as if I were the student, and you'll see in my preview here why the dim lighting wouldn't be a problem in this case. So there's two benefits here for the student. One is they're taking less pictures, and two, the apps will consolidate all of the pages for them into one file. So they're only dealing with a single upload as opposed to, like I was saying before, 20 or 30 different pictures. On the instructor side, the benefit is, as you can see here, the file is color corrected. So the student's handwriting is set darker and the background's a bit faded to make the handwriting pop. That way I can see it easier when I'm grading. So it color corrects any potential lighting issues for you. So I'm going to go ahead and select that now as the student, and we'll upload that file to this assignment. And now we're on the screen that I mentioned earlier. This is where the students get to associate their answers with the outline questions that the teacher has created. So remember, when we set this up as the instructor, I had to designate where those question buckets, where I want students to put their work. So now it's on the student to link up the questions to where they've been answered. So I'll say question 1 is on page 1 here. Question 2 can also be on page 1. Let's say 2.2 is split up across the 2 pages. I can click both so that 2.2 is now on the teacher side. Gradescope will indicate that it's answered across 2 pages. For the third question here, I'll just say that's on the second page. When it is all linked up and ready to go, I click on Submit, and that submits my work to the instructor side of Gradescope. Until the due date, the student can resubmit their work. So if they need to start over with a new file, they may do so. if they want to stick with the file but take another look at what they've done with the question associations, they can always reselect the pages here. All right, so now that that's been submitted, let's jump back over to the instructor side. And at this point, if I hit refresh, we should have a submission. There it is. And let's say all of my students have submitted and it's time for me to grade. I'll go ahead and grade this one. You can see here it's broken up into those questions again. Just to speed this up, I will not bother creating a rubric for these first few. And then for our last question here, I just want to put a little bit of scratch work to show you how it appears for the student. And we will say this is incorrect. But again, you can use these fields for as much detail as you'd like in your feedback. Mine's pretty simple. I should have mentioned earlier, you can put LaTeX notation in if you'd like to add some mathematical equation for the student to read. You can also click these for quick links into bolding the text, underlining, italicizing, formatting the text, and or switching it to a code style string. Oh, and there is, more recently, we added an image button here too, so you can put an image into the feedback as well. All right, so we'll say the student is incorrect on this question and move on. Now the entire assignment is graded across the board for the class. From the instructor side, I then get to review the grades. That'll just show me a simplified view of statistics and my list of who has submitted and who has not yet. Down here in statistics, I have even more data on the answers for the assignment. The nice thing about the statistics tab here is not only do I get the basic stats up on the top, I can also separate stats by tag. Some instructors use tags to differentiate questions based on textbook chapters, course content across weeks, maybe a difficult versus an easier question. I'll just hit this tag I have here for topic 1. So you can add these keywords, these tags to each question, and then sort your statistics by those tags. So pretty nice. You know, in the past, any data like this would have to be entered into a spreadsheet manually from if you were grading by hand. Gradescope does all that work for you. All right, so let's now take a look at the student side of this assignment. After it has been graded by my instructor, I may return to the assignment. Again, the student clicks into their Canvas course, launches the Gradescope link, whether it's the hub or directly into the assignment, they will end up in the assignment. And if the, oh, you know what? I forgot to release it because I was talking about statistics. I'm going to go to the review grade screen here. There's 2 buttons on the bottom for the instructor. Apologies, I just went to the student side prematurely. On the bottom, we have, on the bottom right, there's 2 buttons. You will see a publish grades button, and for you, it'll say post grades to Canvas, not Brightspace. That's just in my demo here. But so you have an LMS grade button and you have a Gradescope grade button, and there is a difference. The publish grades button should be the first one that you click, because that one is going to make your feedback visible to students. That's how students get the feedback. That's how they see anything that you've written on their attempts. And that's also how they'll know whether or not they need to submit a regrade request. If you like, you may have noticed that button switches to compose email to students. You can send an email to students. They even start you off with a template here. You can email them to let them know your Gradescope feedback for this assignment is now visible. You may log in to the Gradescope side of your Canvas assignment to see that feedback. And then down here, post grades, and again, yours will say to Canvas. When you click that, that's what's going to send the number grades that have landed on in Gradescope over to the grade column associated with this assignment on the Canvas side. So 2 parts. All right, so now that I've published my feedback to students, now when I jump over to the student side, apologies again, when I go to that assignment, we should have a grade there this time. All right, so it now says graded, and I can look through my questions. Now, the student's eyes are probably going to go straight to this one, 0 out of 3 points, and I can click on there to see any feedback that the instructor has left. Why did I get this wrong? Over here, I can see anything that the instructor has marked up the submission with. And now's when the regrade request might come in handy, if you've got that activated for students. So if I want to ask that my teacher take another look at this, I can click on Request Regrade. Actually, you'll notice it's specific to the question that the student currently has highlighted. So when I click on question 3 here, Request Regrade, request a regrade for question 3, I'll say, please take another look and request that regrade. And now when I go to the instructor side, and we'll go to the Manage Submissions page here. Oh, no, I'm going to go to Regrade Requests. Apologies. So we go to Regrade Requests. Remember, this is where we initially turned this on or turned it off. We can still turn it on and off down here, but now I can actually see a list of any regrade requests that have come through. So my student has requested that I take a look at question 3. When I click on Review, it'll lead me right into question 3. Having me take a look at the question again, it'll give me the student's message here, and then I can respond to that for the student to see on their side of Gradescope if they'd like. And then we can also change the grade if needed at this point. All right. So at this point, are there any questions or concerns? I'm happy to show anything we've looked at already again or try to clarify anything. We have a few minutes left. My next thing was going to be showing you the support center. But before we jump there, I figured I'd take a pause and see if there's any questions. All right, I think we're okay. So Gradescope does have a you know what, I'm remembering now, we are not going to look at the support center. If you are looking for support overall on how to use Gradescope, how to get set up in Canvas, we are going to direct you to Texas, the help desk for you. So I already put the chat, put the email in the chat that you'll reach out to. So I'm not going to recommend you reach out to Gradescope's help team. But what I do want to show you is that article I mentioned for students for best practices on scanning mobile devices, scanning with mobile devices. This is an important one that will be included in the follow-up email for this session. It's just a guide that will inform students on which apps to use for each device and the best practices for getting the best scans in. All right. So Isabel, is there something that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so just to go off of what Chris was saying, if you have any questions, to please email us at aihelp@tamu.edu, or you can also join us during our office hours. We have that on our lms.tamu.edu website that I can post in the chat in just a moment. But we're happy to help you with whatever you guys need for when it comes to integrating Gradescope into your Canvas course.
All right. Are there any questions, concerns? Okay, great. So I think we're okay. If anything does come up, Isabel, let us know, and we're here to help. Best of luck to everyone jumping into Gradescope for the first time.
To learn more, please visit lms.tamu.edu or email us at aihelp@tamu.edu. Thank you.